Hey everyone, just before we jump into the episode, if you're listening to this and struggling to build pipeline through outbound prospecting, go and grab yourself a free access to my new prospecting course. It's got lessons on cold calling. It has the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. I break the exact script down and I give you one of my AI tools so that you can build your own version of it. I have a lesson on outbound email, how to actually write that very first outbound email, teaching you the key components, and I give you examples of what good looks like. There's lessons in there on how to use video and voice note prospecting to cut through the noise and grab your buyer's attention. And then there's a whole load of other resources in there and lessons and tools. So if you're struggling to build pipeline, go and grab that now. There'll be a link in the video description. Anyway, let's jump into the episode. All right, guys, today I've got 5 MEDDPICC tips to help you implement it or use it more effectively through your sales process. So let's get into it today. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is stepped metrics. I call it the stepped metrics model. I've been teaching this even since I was a VP of sales. So probably, gosh, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 years. And the problem is that a lot of sales reps, they get stuck with somebody very, very low in the account, and what happens is that person talks about a metric. Let's say I'm talking to the L&D manager. They might be talking about training completion rates as a metric isn't performing very well. They go and ask the economic buyer for £250,000 for a solution to solve that. They don't see the connect, there's a disconnect, and they struggle to see why they should make that investment over everything else. So what I did is I came up with this model where you kind of climb this staircase. At the very, very top, is the economic buyer. It's what they care about. Things like operating profit, for example, in this case could be one. And then as you step down the staircase down to, like, let's say, I don't know, 3 or 4 levels where the L&D manager is, or head of learning and development, they might care about things like, training completion rates. Let me walk this one out with you. So L&D manager jumps on a call. They're like, hey, we just have this global workforce and all of our training at the moment is done in person. So we have like a big group of people that, struggle to complete training on a regular basis. So our training completion rates are low. I say, great, got it, makes sense. I can understand where that would come from. I'm thinking I need to climb higher. That doesn't scream, come and buy me £250,000. So I'm like, hey, if we don't improve those training completion rates, what other business metrics are going to suffer as a result? And they might say, well, skill gaps. If we're not training our people effectively, then we're going to have these big skill gaps in our team, and we're not going to be able to do the work that we need to do on time, etc. By the way, if they don't know this, you need to be there as a trusted advisor, as a guide to guide them. So again, go to GPT, say, I sell this, this, and this to these people. They typically start at this level. Help me walk the metrics up, right? And then you've got them in your back pocket ready for later if you need them. So I say, hey, training completion rates, definitely I can understand why that would be a problem. But I also get that, as a result of that, skill gaps is going to be a business problem that you're going to start to identify. I guess that means things like headcount goes up. Is that right? How is your headcount actuals looking like compared to what you guys planned at the beginning of the year? Yeah, because we've got these big skill gaps. We're not able to deliver the projects on time with our customers. Customers pay us £1 million plus for these projects, so we have to overhire. So we hire extra people, but also we outsource to consultants and things like that to help us get the work done. So I'm thinking, okay, this is getting more expensive now. This problem, this low training completion rates, is becoming more of a business problem. And then I understand ultimately that, the economic buyer is going to be John. John in the annual report, or the prospect tells me that, John cares about operating profit. They're getting ready for a big growth phase, or they're getting ready to sell the business, or whatever it might be. So now I can, when I build my business case and meet with the economic buyer, I can start to really say, look, I've been speaking to Mandy about low training completion rates. What we're seeing as we kind of climb up the organization is, in your world, you care about operating profit, getting ready to sell the business. And this is why this is going to be a really important initiative that we should focus on. Would you sponsor this project? That kind of stuff. So use stepped metrics to go from where you are today, maybe low in the account, to climb up the top of the staircase to where the economic buyer is, and they want to talk about big business outcomes. Okay. Cool. So that's number one. Number two is metric story framework. So The best way to talk about your business in my world is through customer stories. It kind of really resonates with the prospect. It puts themselves in, your customer's shoes, and they're like, oh wow, like they've been able to solve this. They've been able to generate the outcomes that I want to generate. I feel inspired now to learn more or go through a sales process, right? But a lot of sellers that do try and tell stories, they tell them wrong. They're not really inspiring. They don't talk about metrics. So here's a really simple formula that you can implement today to start telling better stories or talking about metrics in your discovery calls and throughout the sales process. So you might say something like customer name increased or decreased metric from before to after, resulting in Y outcome. For example, Acme increased their win rates from 10 to 18%, resulting in an extra £300,000 in annual recurring revenue. Or Acme decreased their employee turnover rates from 25 to 17%, saving them £1 million in recruitment fees every year. So you can just again, take that framework, write it down, put it into GPT and say, help me build this out based on what I sell to my ICP, these personas, these champion profiles, etc. Okay, so try that framework out. So let's talk about how economic buyers next make decisions and how you can prepare best for them. So I'm going to break this down into two parts. The last part I'm going to come back to at the very end, because I'm literally going to read word for word what you can type into ChatGPT to get this context. So the first part, how economic buyers, how EBs actually make decisions. There's a bunch of reasons, right? And every EB is usually different. So we want to stay curious and, always be in that validation mode, always be in discovery. But if you wanted to pick three buckets, it's going to be cost versus value, time to value, and confidence in delivery. Okay, so cost versus value, time to value, and then confidence in delivery. So let me break those down. Cost versus value. If you want me to spend £100,000 on your solution, what value am I getting back? Or what value am I not getting right now? And that's kind of the difference between cost of inaction and ROI. And we want to capture both of those to really be like, hey, here's your problem. The reason you need to spend 100 grand is you're losing 500 grand a year or a quarter on X. Our 100 grand solution will completely remove that loss of revenue or whatever it might be. And then in terms of business value, if you were to spend that 100 grand, not only will we give you that 500 grand back, we also believe we can give you an additional 250 grand of that on top by using our solution, for example. So when they look at your 100 grand, if they have nothing to compare that to in terms of business value, they're going to struggle to connect the dots. You have to realize, people, that attention spans have never been so low. Google attention spans in 2025, it will tell you it's 8.25 seconds, down from 12 seconds a few years ago. People's attention spans are low, especially executives. They're busy, they're pulled left, right, and center. They're on things all of the time. You have to make it crystal clear. The cost is going to be this. The value is going to be this. That's a tick for them. Okay, great. I'm happy to approve that component. That makes sense. The next part is really important, time to value. If I've got 9 months left of the year and I need to hit a specific goal as an economic buyer and I'm accountable to that to the board, but it's going to take me 15 months to implement and get the real value from your solution, I'll agree it's a useful solution, but I might push it out or deprioritize it for now because I need something to help me hit this goal for 9 months. And if you don't help them see that, that's why I call it a path to success, not a mutual action plan. Mutual action plans, the last step is always, in most cases, closed won or contract signed. Yeah, economic buyers don't buy stuff. Champions don't buy stuff to sign contracts. They buy it to unlock and realize the value that they came to you with or you went to them with in the first place. So a path to success, yes, it features like a mutual action plan, the steps from here to contract signed. It also includes the steps to get you onboarded and also those upcoming months on where do we believe, which month do we believe you're going to get your payback, and then when do we believe we're going to add real value. And if we can give them the dotted line, they're like, okay, cool, cost versus value makes sense. I can get that value in this time period, which is going to help me hit my goals. Tick. Finally, everybody talks a really good game. Economic buyers are economic buyers because they've been in the game for a while. So they've been burnt as they've climbed up the staircase, as they climbed up the hierarchy. They bought things that's never really followed through. So their guard's up. And if you like read any Gartner report recently, it will tell you that 60% of B2B buyers, they suffer with buyer's remorse. So they bought something that the rep promised them that it would do. They grab hold of it. It doesn't follow through on that. And then the CFO 6 months later asks them, did we get the ROI that we were talking about? And that person runs away pretty quick because they can't have that conversation because they haven't been able to. So what we need to do is give them confidence. I talk a lot about proof points and evidence. That's why I capture loads of video testimonials from my customers, or on my LinkedIn, if you go to my recommendations page, I always capture like written versions from them on LinkedIn, because a lot of my competitors have got their mates leaving them reviews on their website, and a lot of people fall for those. So I want like really nailed on, decent proof points and evidence that I can deliver on what I'm saying to give the economic buyer real confidence that we can solve the problem and solve it quickly, and they're going to get value from this investment. That can also be like introductions. Like I talk about it in the champion playbook. I talk about it in lots of different things. Like, how do we actually just make this champion feel really confident? They go to their boss and talk about, value, talk about the outcomes that the business is trying to achieve. But also, like, how do we introduce the business who we're trying to sell to champions at other businesses to help bring that confidence up? Don't sit there and wait for your prospect to come to you and ask for a reference call. Lead with it. You'd be like, hey, look, when we get to this stage, I want to put you on a call with like 2 or 3 of our customers just so you can see what life's like working with us. Would that be cool? I've done that so many times now. Most of the time people like don't need that because it screams confidence. It screams, value, right? I've been there, I've done it before. So the second part around like how to prep for that meeting, I'm going to come to it in just a moment, because I want to give you like the step-by-step, word-by-word prompt that you can put into ChatGPT. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you is about decision criteria buckets and post-discovery call forms. So there's 3 kind of buckets that a business will kind of put things into when they are evaluating a vendor. You're going to have this technical bucket. That will be things like, SAP integration, real-time dashboards, workflows, whatever it might be, call recording, that kind of stuff, right? You've then got this economic bucket, commercial bucket. That's going to be payment terms, contract length, scalable pricing, a bunch of different things go into that bucket. And then a relationship bucket. I've won a lot of deals at startups in the relationship bucket because our competitors would just sign you up and send you an onboarding video. You had to watch that, where we would give you a onboarding manager, a training manager, and a customer success manager, and those 3 people were all different and skilled in those areas, and we would force that into the decision criteria framework because we knew it was going to be important to our customers, and we attached that to business outcomes. And that's the bit I want to talk to you about in decision criteria in those buckets is, elite sales reps are really, really good at taking an item like, dedicated onboarding, something that's not really sexy and doesn't go onto like your website in most cases, but it should do, because if your buyer's nervous and they're worried about adoption and ultimately following through on the ROI, then why would we not spell that out? So you've got technical, economic, relationship buckets. You need to be putting stuff into those and then working your way through them. But like, how do we capture those? Well, if we're on a discovery call, we're probably talking about problems, root cause, business impact. We're telling a customer story to build confidence we can solve the problem. We also need to understand people and process. We might give them a glimpse into pricing and understand business case requirements, that kind of stuff. And then we want to drive next steps. In most cases, reps really struggle to properly capture decision criteria. I don't mean like, it has to have this integration. I'm like, exactly what they need across all 3 of those buckets. And then they jump onto a demo next and they just start showing them everything because they don't have the specifics, right? And the decision criteria, guys, is so important because it's what the prospect is using to qualify you. So you're using MEDDPICC to qualify them, or you're using certain tools and methodologies and stuff to qualify the prospect. They're using decision criteria to qualify you, right? And some things are weighted heavy, like more heavy than others. And some of them are really important, some of them aren't so important. And they're going to be scoring and evaluating you. So you need to get a really good, clear kind of grip on what those are. I recommend, if you struggle to do it on a discovery call but don't want to have another discovery meeting before a demo, just email over your prospect a link to a Monday form or a Google form, whatever it might be, and just have like a couple of things like, if you were to buy our solution, technically what would it need to do? And I kind of, again, I'm building a SaaS app that does some of this, but it's like, hey, here's the criteria, and here's it in table format, and then ask them to stack rank it. Like, what's most important? What's the weight? Is this a critical capability? Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? For critical and high ones, there's a column around like business outcomes. Like, what do you need this to generate? If you can't put anything in there, like, it probably doesn't need to be in there. And it's a good way of you like qualifying out like competitors' differentiation they're trying to wedge in. Oh, it has to have a Slack integration. Cool. You've marked that as critical. What's a business outcome that's going to help generate? How will that make this project more successful? If they stumble and they struggle, then you've got a really good argument to say, do we really need that in there? How about we have onboarding support so we can ensure that you've got high adoption, the platform set up for success, and you actually generate ROI? Would that be a helpful criteria to have to drive those kind of outcomes and improve those metrics? Yeah, absolutely. So I've just ripped out one that we don't have, that's not really required, and I've wedged in one of ours that a competitor doesn't have. Okay, and that walks me in nicely to sell the differentiation gap. So when I do decision criteria training and deployment of MEDDPICC with sales organizations, you need to really stand out. There's a lot of technology out there now because of AI. It's so much easier to build stuff. Like, I'm vibe coding SaaS apps. I'm not an engineer. So it's so easy, and we're going to see a massive rise over the next 1 to 2 years of SaaS apps. It's exploded anyway, but I think AI is going to help more SaaS apps hit the market. And I think SaaS, to a degree, isn't going to be dead, but I think we're going to start to see more like professional services and value added things added to SaaS, because it's literally just going to be a race to the bottom, and like everyone's going to have apps. Building features is going to take something you do in an hour, not in 6 months. So, you really need to stand out, tell your strategic narrative, I would say, that features your differentiation, and talk about business outcomes that you generate, and ensure that that criteria becomes part of their formalized decision criteria that they go to market with. So, for example, when I quit my VP job 2 years ago to start this business, one of the things that I knew, because I've actually been a sales leader before and had to drive change in businesses, unlike a lot of people that I quote unquote compete with, who are just AEs that have never led teams, never really know what it takes to drive behavior change. When I built this business and I built my strategic narrative, it was all around like, nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. 70% of people plus report getting no formal sales training. So is it any surprise that Salesforce finds every year 80% of sellers miss their quota? But if we actually take a step back, managers don't have the capacity or capability to actually solve that problem, because they've had little training on how to run a training program and do coaching and enablement, but also they're managing big teams, so they don't have the time to build that content, deliver it as a program, and reinforce it. So I kind of built that into my strategic narrative and said, look, we don't just do training. Differentiator is we also do coaching. We also do this AI stack where you can access 30 custom GPTs that will do like call coaching. You drop a transcript in, and rather than spending an hour listening to a call, it will do that heavy lift for you in like 30 seconds and build you coaching points that you need to have a conversation with your rep. And this is going to allow you to get through more calls, or actually coach calls again, because you've been busy, which is going to help drive change and ultimately increase that win rate that you want to take from 10 to 18%, whatever it might be. Right. So talk about, why you came to market, why you didn't follow everybody else. Why is it different? How is it different? And what business outcomes that's going to generate. And I would call that the selling your differentiation gap. Where's the market today? Why are you different? Why is that important? And what outcomes is that going to generate for your prospect? Okay, cool. So as we wrap up here with this episode, I said I'm going to come back to how to prepare for economic buyer meetings. Here's a GPT kind of prompt that you can use. You just need to tweak some of it. Okay, so I'm going to read it out word for word. And then you can just like pause parts of this episode so that you can kind of edit it and add it into GPT. You can probably put this into any kind of AI, really, Gemini, anything, right? Just pop it in there and see what it gives you. So the prompt goes like this. And this is basically like I'm meeting with the economic buyer. I'm going to be with my champion. We're going to be asking for, budget to be created, budget to fund this initiative. So I want to understand like where the risk is, right? So the prompt goes like this. I sell, and then in brackets, outcome-focused B2B sales training with a reinforcement strategy to drive change and improve sales performance, which is suffering due to a major seller skill gap in the sales team. And then the bracket closes. So you would put in those brackets what you sell. Then it goes on to say, I've been speaking with the VP of sales at company name. You can put the website in there. And we have built a data-driven skill development program to help the reps execute a better sales process with a focus on discovery process, which is the root cause issue of their forecasting problem. We now have a meeting with the CFO, maybe put in their name, Joe Bloggs, who is the economic buyer. Why might they reject the idea of me helping them roll this out in a training program format? Give me the top 3 reasons why they would use those reasons and what I can do to overcome them and prepare best for this meeting. And you literally just paste that. So you just need to update some of the bit that I use for mine. And it's going to tell you these are the top 3 reasons why they would do it. It's going to come back with something like maybe lack of confidence in ROI. I mentioned earlier how they make decisions is around confidence in your ability to actually deliver what you're saying. So there's going to be some stuff in there that's blatantly obvious, but I can almost guarantee you there's going to be stuff that you're not even thinking about. And if they hit you in the face with that on that call and you're not prepared, they're going to see that. And that's going to reduce the confidence even more. And you might say, well, let me go away and find that out. But they're expecting you to know that. You know, you're meeting with the CFO in this case to ask for 100 grand, 200 grand, 50 grand, £1 million, whatever it is. They expect you to know some of this stuff. And this is where AI can help you. Sure, we want to ask our champion, and I would socialize this with them as well, by the way. I'd be like, hey, just been doing some thinking ahead of our conversation with John, your CFO, next Wednesday. These are like the top 3 things I'm thinking that John might bring up to block this or maybe say no. What do you think? Do you agree with these? Would you position these in a slightly different way? Why else would John say no to this? And maybe there's a 4th that, you know, you need to be inside the organization to really have that context. Like, we're thinking about selling the business soon and there's a nervousness with this, right? AI just wouldn't know they're thinking about selling the business unless something's come out in the press. So you need that insider insights, which is, again, what champions are all about. And I talk about this in the champion playbook. So hope this was helpful. If there's components of MEDDIC or MEDDPICC that you want me to talk about in an upcoming, future podcast, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Hit Your Numbers podcast soon. This episode is sponsored by, I'm just playing, but I do have 2 things for you today. So we recently released a mini prospecting course, 100% free to access, where I break down the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. There's a lesson on how to write great first outbound emails. And then there's another lesson on video and voice note prospecting and best practices. And there's so much more in the course as well. If you want to get free access, just click the link in the description below. Now, alternatively, I said there's a second thing. Maybe you don't need prospecting support, but maybe you need help running better demos or scoring your deals with MEDDPICC, or you need help with prospects that are ghosting you. If this is the case and you want to unlock some of these trainings and resources, go ahead and join the prospecting course anyway, because you'll find there's other resources and more content in the mini content vault folder. So go sign up today and unlock these resources.